Let's call this meeting to order. Before we go to agenda item 1, I think we only have to assign a clerk. Someone needs to write the minutes. I activated the transcript, so I will save that. Judith, you raised the hand. Great, you're getting a special prize. Okay, with that out of order, out of the way, let's say that way. Agenda item 1, review, charge, and scope of work. And Judith, I let you take the lead a little bit today here on these things because you designed the agenda and have great experience on how to organize stuff like this.
Well, alrighty then. Let me quickly jump to the work plan slide deck so that I can remind myself what it is that I suggested we do and in what order we do it. One moment. I wonder if it would be helpful. I see we have a couple of community members joining us. Would it be helpful perhaps if I showed, as I believe Paul Bohm did in the municipal consolidation work group, just showed a slide that discusses some of the tasks we're
It's
undertaking.
mainly for us on the working side, to just remind us what we discussed in a larger group and then take it from there.
So I'm happy to show this one slide that has a task summary. I don't know if I am co-host and I can share screen.
Mark.
So, Judith, before we go to task summaries, I mean, the concept here, though, is that the three of us are going to focus on the fire and police, correct?
Public safety, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So maybe that's a good place to start. I mean, maybe doing this just, as a voiceover is sufficient. So to orient our community members that are joining us on the call, the scope of this particular subgroup is to consider, as Mark just suggested, the specific needs for public safety land uses in the town. So public safety, I think when we all, think of that term, we think of police and fire, but of course there are other components to that, including there's animal control, there are other elements that fall within the facilities that are typically grouped under public safety. So that is our concern in this committee. There are in this subgroup, there are other subgroups that are looking at different topic areas, including public works and municipal consolidation. So our focus is simply looking at public safety. So in terms of scope, that helps us understand the topic area. And then as we think about the type of work or the type of questions that are informing our thinking about where the town sits with these kinds of facilities, is we want to begin by trying to understand where we are. What's the state of public safety facilities in the town? What are the needs that we have, and so forth? And that is primarily, I think, what we're going to talk about today, is really trying to understand the state of the buildings, and in particular, any metrics or analyses that have been undertaken to help us understand where those facilities currently sit. I will also mention that we have undertaken site visits. I know that Sven and Mark have seen the public safety campus on 209 Walden, and I believe you guys have also seen the West Concord Fire Station. I was out of town, I missed that, but I'm going to be going to see those facilities in a couple of weeks. So we will also be reporting on those site visits and how they shaped or shaping our understanding of basically what the needs are.
Judith, just real quick. So Linda is a former select board member. Carlin sits on the finance committee, I believe. So each Carlin and Linda are very well aware of a lot of issues. I'm not sure they've gone on site tours or what have you, but it's good that Linda and Carlin are here because they bring a tremendous amount of perspective, both from the finance committee perspective and a very close. I forget when Linda his term was over, maybe a year ago, but very current. So in that regard, welcome Carlin and Linda. Second of all, I think the only thing I would add, Judith, is that West Concord has gone through tremendous growth in the last couple of years. West Concord is going to continue to go through tremendous growth. So the status quo of West Concord is interesting from my perspective, but actually anticipating the 240Bs, MCI, construction that seems to be all over the place, all in West Concord, not all, but substantially all in West Concord. I think we need to not only assess where we are today, but do some reasonable planning because we know the people are coming.
Yeah, and we already know from the status that the heat map, if you look at the heat map we got from the fire department, is already heavily weighted to West Concord. And looking at our facility there, I think we have to really get creative.
Mm-hmm. So first of all, Mark, yes, thank you for telling me. I am the rookie here, Carlin and Linda. And Carlin, I know you live in my neighborhood, so extra hello. But thank you. That's helpful because honestly, I've lived here for 25 years and I wouldn't have known what folks' particular experiences were. So that's tremendously helpful. And yes, I think the point about future needs is well taken. So as we consider sort of the state of, we also need to think about forecasting needs into the future, particularly, around these new developments that are happening in town. So all of that is well taken. And I think that we are still gathering data and we're still really trying to understand what are largely anecdotal reports, like other than the TBA report, which was really well done. The TBA report was a consulting report. And this is more for the record than it is for the people currently on this call. But the TBA report, which looked at all of municipally owned buildings in town and did some assessments, there are excellent reporting on in particular, the Walden Street campus. There's less good reporting in that report, frankly, on the West Concord Fire Station, mainly because I think they considered the potential for expansion to be so limited. So there's less attention to that building. But other than that, we are really getting a lot of anecdotal information about people perceiving the public safety infrastructure to either be in good shape or bad shape. And we really need to have more systematic metrics. I do have a quick overview of metrics, but are we ready to really just launch into having a meaningful discussion about state of, so that we can actually draft a report that lays out very clearly, what the challenges are?
So you want to do that in the charge and scope of work agenda item?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think so. Or that's also part two. I mean, it's also part two of the agenda start. But certainly there are some very quick metrics that we can go over and include. So in terms of, and this is really bringing data from the TBA report, so this may be familiar to folks on the call, but the analysis of the police and fire campus at 209 Walden, so built in 1960-61. Currently, it's about 27,000 square feet on a site of 1.6 acres, which is kind of astonishing, right? We knew it was small, but it's really small. That was news to me. So 1.6 acres. Of that 27,000 square feet, about 11,000 is used by the fire department, about 9,000 is used by the police department, and then there are other users at the building that are public safety or police and fire adjacent. The TBA report, based on interviews with the fire chief and the police chief, indicated that the current footprint was too small by these orders of magnitude. So for fire, the estimate was that the footprint is currently 33% too small. So they need an additional 5,000 square feet. Again, this was the analysis itself was done in 2018. The report was issued in 2020. So this data is 7 years old. So this idea of the 5,000, we could go back and check. Police is considered to be 50% too small. They also, in that report, were indicated as needing another 5,000 square feet in order to meet their needs. So if we took the 5,000 expansion for fire, the 5,000 square foot expansion for police, added that to the existing built area of 27, then you get to about 37, or rounding up 40,000 square feet. So also in the TBA report, they mentioned that if there was a desire to consider building a new police and fire campus, that 40,000 square feet would probably meet the needs. And from my quick scanning of other recent fire and police projects in other municipalities, 40,000 seems to be in line with those who have both a main campus and then one other satellite. So 40,000 square feet, but they also indicated a desired site area of about 9 acres, which I assume is somewhat in response to the fact that a fire station in particular, you can't always build up. I mean, some of that has to be delivered, in surface area at grade. So that was the takeaway from the TBA report, was 40,000 square feet if you're doing a campus on 9 acres. Mark.
So Judith, what was shocking to me was that the building really abuts a river or wetland. And what's happened, and I'm not sure when it's happened, how often it's happened in the last 20 years, but there's actually flooding, so that the dispatch area on the first floor has been completely closed and now has been moved to the third floor. So unfortunately, it's nice to talk about needing more land and potentially 40,000 square feet, but that parcel of land has inherent flooding issues. So, and another thing I would mention is that, I really think that given the magnitude of the cost, given the sensitivity to the taxpayer, Carlin can speak to, finance committee's focus, but I really think the heads of fire and police should go back, look at new buildings, things have changed dramatically since that other report was done. So I'm not quite sure how much time it would take, but I really would encourage the chiefs or whomever, the staff, to go back and double check and bring that stuff up to current needs.
Yeah, I think again, building on that is we have to have separate kind of conversation or communication with fire and police chief in that sense. A, is this still what is needed? B, are there other ways to do it? And we might have to brainstorm on some ideas to bring them up to new ideas. Is there, let's say, different scenarios we have to think, and we have to develop the scenarios in this group and then reiterate with them? We could be separating police and fire. Could that save money by just looking a new spot for one, instead of building a whole campus for everyone? To the land question is a big one. I agree with Mark. This was one of the big shocking things from the tour for me, to understand that all our main important service functions that are needed in a case of a 100-year flood will have to deal on their own property with flooding. So this is fire, police, and public works will be flooded when we have a 100-year flood. That's on a that's a significant concern. So we have to build that into our metrics, and what kind of solution we find to at least have at least one of the three main functions in the end. In our case, it's one of two, hopefully, in a non-flooding area.
And I know that there's the heat map and there's some sensitivity, or it's actually, I guess, pretty critical that there be 2 fire stations so that, the fire trucks can get to all ends of towns within, I think, 5 minutes or some period of time. But I guess the question to the group is, and I don't know the answer, is do the police have a similar sort of need in that if West Concord is growing dramatically, do we need now to split them so there are 2 hubs, if you will, for public safety to address not only Concord proper, quote unquote, but West Concord?
So I'm writing all of these down, of course. They're all great questions and important questions, and we will be, confronting and discussing those as we move forward. I think it probably makes good sense to do what it is I think Mark suggested, but also Sven and I have discussed this. We would like to invite the fire chief and the police chief to, come and speak with us about the kinds of data that we might need to update the 2018 needs assessment, and also to consider forecasts that have changed. What are the service forecasts now that we are looking at some significant new additions or proposed additions, pipeline additions of residential units, particularly in West Concord. So all of those factors, I think, are going to come into play. And then we also need to look at creative ideas, and including the, what is the implication of response times relative to the capacity of the station in West Concord. So there's a fair number of questions at play here, and I think just corralling the questions is a great place to start. Mark, and then we can go to Carlin. I can see that she has.
Yeah, on that, and maybe you mentioned it, Judith, but I really think that we really should try to put, we should have the chiefs in their department really think about this hard and present it as opposed to someone else. So, it's like your kids doing the homework, right? If the kids actually do the homework, they'll understand it. I'm a little bit concerned that if someone else does it, the chiefs won't put maybe the time and thoughtfulness that needed to be, so that, because at some level there needs to be not only knowledge but accountability. Because we're going to say that, this is what the chiefs told us they needed, and we used reasonable parameters, but I think there needs to be some sort of nexus to them really putting their thinking caps on here.
Agreed. Sven, I think I'm not quite clear, by the way, again, rookie.
Yeah, normally
I'm not quite clear how it works in a subgroup with regard to public comment. Although,
let's first try that we do our deliberation, and then for the agenda item we open up for the public. That's best normally. Here I also would think we have to look at some kind of benchmarks to compare whatever we hear, how other comparable towns are doing it. Again, if we stick with the example of the kids doing homework, if I ask I remember when my kids were small and I asked what they want everything. So we need to have some kind of a benchmarking here to understand what makes sense, and compare that to other towns and see if this is realistic.
Yeah, and a follow-up to that, the footnote there also is that I think that one of the things we should be asking the chiefs, and I think all the chiefs speak, communicate. They're probably in similar organizations, what have you. But I for one would actually like to receive, Tom's recommendation for, not only size but some facilities nearby which we can go actually visit. So I think it would be worthwhile to go to Sudbury, or I think Tom had mentioned Sudbury being sort of a new state-of-the-art sort of facility. But I do think it would be nice to have some renderings, some pictures as to, to complete the report as to things you can touch and see, Judith, as opposed to, maybe just data.
I think there are actually lots of, I was surprised. I wasn't doing it in a systematic manner, but I was simply looking at recent projects in the Boston Metro West, and a number of municipalities, including Lexington, have built new campuses over the last 5 years. So I think we'll have lots of stuff to look at.
Perhaps we can open up now to Colin.
Mhm.
Colin.
Thank you. Carlin Reed, 83 Wits End, member of the Finance Committee, but speaking on my own behalf, as usual. Two things. Thank you, folks. I work with the town clerk's office, and when we were re-precincting, drawing the lines for the 5 precincts of town that have to be done by population, from the 2020 census, we discovered that 2/3 of the population lives south of Route 2, which is why some of the precinct lines were drawn. Judith, I'm suggesting that the clerk's office has data on population, and putting an enhanced fire/police/ambulance facility south of Route 2, whether it's at the current West Concord location or at a larger location, I think is very important for that one particular reason. I also think it's important to maintain a presence of a fire department north of Route 2 because of what happened last Thursday at the townhouse. There was a fire alarm. I know because I was there with my ballot workers trying to push out the ballots for the special town election. We smelled smoke, and in about 5 to 10 minutes, we were told to evacuate the townhouse because of a fire concern. The fire department was already on the scene because they have a fire station located very close to the critical infrastructures, townhouse, as well as some of the historic areas. So maintaining 2 locations for the fire department, I think, is critical. And if it's a matter of finances, I suspect we will find a way to finance that. Thank you.
Great. I'm writing that down, Carlin.
Good quote, mate.
Yeah.
That's
I
on the
think,
record.
I think this comes to the point that where we have to build scenarios, so looking at data, heat maps, and so on. But it could be that one of the potential scenarios could be that a proper Concord, or how we want to name it, has a smaller fire footprint, and the larger fire department footprint is in West Concord, given the weight of the 6% now, which increases with 240Bs plus MCI. There will be much more action on that side, and we might have to think about different weighting of these things, both on the fire and the police side.
Mhm. Interesting, though, location can be a tricky thing, because I think I looked at the heat map very quickly just to confirm, sort of an initial suspicion that a tremendous amount of the calls, of course, are related to the Newbury Court area and the hospital, right? So I think there's a disproportionate number of certainly EMS trips that are in that particular location that would actually likely be better served by the Walden Street, the Walden Street north of Route 2 station, as opposed to even, West Concord with that turn. I wonder who's going to get there faster. And if you relocate the West Concord fire station, finding a large parcel, or you might actually still get to a point where serving a major spot on the heat map is still done somewhat perhaps illogically or unexpectedly by the station that's on the other side, right? So it's fascinating to think about. These are great questions. And of course, by the way, I hate to bring up the dreaded consultant word, but there are several consultants for whom evaluating public safety facilities in municipalities and making recommendations based on all of these kinds of data points is their bread and butter.
So I'm not sure we got an answer to the question, but I think we should ask the question whether fire and/or police have the budget for some sort of proactive consultant planning. The planning department should have budget for the type of work that you think is logically sits in their department. So I agree with you, Judith. And I'm hoping that we can find some money in maybe one of those or all of those areas, maybe pieces, but I think we should have sort of informed and benchmarked data. But it's a budget issue, right? We gotta find whose budget we can, pull from, if you will.
I'm just trying to ballpark what I think something like that would cost based on experience. I mean, I think it's a relatively routine framework, and if you get somebody who's working in Massachusetts or New England, the state regulations around response times and stuff are fairly well known. I would think they'd be able to move through something like this pretty quickly. So I don't see it as being a, sort of a six-figure type of consulting outlay. I think it would be in the lower 5 digits, if I had to ballpark it.
And I think, wasn't it Megan who said that she was going to look into it? So I think we just should write, it doesn't need to be in the public record or whatever the minutes, but we should just write a note to follow up with Megan.
Yeah, I think we co-chairs have a separate call with Megan.
Okay.
Respect to all data, and that belongs to it because data alone doesn't help. We need support on analyzing it.
And returning to sort of this our circular agenda that is both, scope of work, impressions from site visits, as well as like what the TBA report tells us and what data needs we think that we think we might need. One of the interesting things about the charge of the land use working group is that we are looking at a variety of different sites around town that are either ready for disposition, are town-owned and are vacant and underutilized, or under some kind of condition where they might be available for reuse. And our charge with regard to recommendations to the select board is to be thinking about future public safety needs while also thinking strategically about the role that some of these parcels might be able to play, either in full or in part, in accommodating some of these future public safety needs, right? So that's an important part of our thinking is, are there creative, I like Sven's use of the term ideas, but are there creative ideas about how we can engage some of these future development projects to either, help provide some of the funding for new public safety facilities, to provide some of the land, so on and so forth, right? So thinking strategically about these opportunities, I think is a big part of our scope of work.
But I think, I agree with you. I think that the reality though is that, well, not the reality, but if we were to able to get good information on footprints, either a combined footprint or a separate, I think then we could start eliminating, land that never makes sense. So I would say that, 229 Main never makes sense because it's way off on the Maynard side. There's traffic issues. There's all sort of congestion. So we can take that right off, the sheet. And then there are going to be two parcels that are just going to be too small. So I suspect we whittle it down pretty quickly to, I don't know, 4 or 5 parcels.
If you're lucky.
Right.
Right. Yes, I completely agree that and this is what's interesting about the land use working group and the fact that we have subgroups who are looking at specific topic areas, but at the same time, the larger group, we're still corralling the list of sites, right? Because we've got sort of a set of town-owned properties, but there are also properties that are not technically currently town-owned, but still belong in our analysis matrix. So, looking at getting the full list of sites together, and then I agree, based on certain needs and location factors, our list should get winnowed pretty quickly. So I think what we could do, I mean, I know that this is what they did in one of the other subgroups, and maybe this is a useful exercise because I think the conversation and the minutes will reflect that we have ideas about data that we need. We have ideas about speaking to the chiefs and engaging the chiefs. We have ideas about perhaps exploring with a consultant. We'll get more information from the larger working group about the list of sites, right? So all of that activity is kind of happening and ongoing. It might be useful to spend part of our time really trying to enumerate what we see as the problem, and the need to act now and proactively, because I've said this a few times, but I think it will come up as the work of this working group starts to become a little bit more discussed around town. One of the big stumbling blocks is going to be that people drive past 209 Walden, and I think most of us, myself included, prior to getting involved in this work, would not necessarily understand that that was a public safety facility that was in as bad of shape as it turns out that it is, right? So I think we need to really be clear in writing our state of report and our needs assessment so that we can help our community members understand the need, the urgency, and so forth. So
Yeah, I still have questions on that. Because we have to sit back and say, for example, on that specific property, the Joint Fire and Police headquarters, is it bad because it's overcrowded, or is it bad because it's structurally an issue? And I haven't settled really in my head, be blindly open, that this is a structural issue beside a flooding challenge. Or is it appeared for me kind of you're putting too many people and too small of a footprint. And if that's the case, then you might think in scenarios a little bit differently, specifically when we think potentially in a scenario waiting a more fire headquarters in West Concord, and a relief valve for that location, and is then that location still in play and just needs a little bit of an upgrade. That could be, instead of rebuilding 2 fire stations in totality, doing one right and the other is an upgrade, and shift people. Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm not 100% sad. We saw a lot of properties. We saw a lot of in the last 2 weeks. If I compare the range of where the shape is and where structural issues are, I'm not 100% settled that there's a major structural issue. It seems to be for me more kind of overfilled location.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I think as we assess all of these town properties, there's capacity issues, and then there are condition issues. And in addition, at 209 Walden, there's a site issue, right, with flooding. But generally speaking, a building can have capacity issues. It simply doesn't mean present or future needs, or it can have condition issues, right, as 2 large categories. Mark?
So, Jed, the only thing I think of is, if we ask ourselves the question, what are we trying to solve or address? I think we have to be out 10 or 15 years. I think we have to assume MCI is probably at the middle of the 3 flavors that they've showed. We assume the 240Bs. We assume the developments that are in the works, and we probably add I don't know, 2-3% fudge factor, come up with a number that says our population today is X. We will reasonably be at Y. Here's what we think as far as how it's spread out. And then I think we need to be open with the chiefs of both fire and police to say, just so we're on the same page, here's what we're trying to solve. It's not a current day problem we're trying to solve. I mean, we are trying to solve the current day problem, but we don't want to sort of cut off our nose to spite our face by not solving this 10 or 15-year problem, because as a taxpayer, one of the most annoying things, the things that drives me bananas, is sort of not keeping up with things, not planning, not sort of being proactive, rather being reactive to say, oh, the building's going to fall down. Well, great. What have we done with the building for the last 30 years? Nothing. Well, why have we done nothing? So I think we need to sort of figure out what answer, what data, what are we trying to address? Inform both police and fire, and then make sure that whatever plan they come up with reasonably addresses that forecasted need.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what you just described, Mark, is the, the planning process, right? This is
Okay.
planning for future needs, right? This is what is typically undertaken. And I gather, again, I'm sitting under like 15 reports that I'm trying to review so I can understand all these properties. I gather there hasn't been a public safety master plan, facilities master plan in the last 20 years. I assume. I haven't seen one other than the conditions analysis that's in the TBA report. So I would agree. And this, by the way, is also, you can get a consultant. Consultants do exactly what it is you just described, Mark. Like a good consultant could churn out a report that does that. We may be able to save the town a little bit of money by doing some broad, sort of thinking and collecting of numbers around those ideas and include those in our recommendations to the select board. And then the select board could then, decide to move forward with a consultant as well. But I do think we can corral some of that data for ourselves.
But I think we can do some very basic assumptions already, working assumptions today while we are doing, let's say, the confirmatory data collection, or perhaps we find a surprise by saying, okay, this is where the population is today, spread between Concord and West Concord, 240Bs. How many people will that generate? 500 to 700 housing units potentially on MCI. What will that generate? So we already get orders of magnitudes that inform us where this goes. It's not rocket science here.
Well,
I agree it's not rocket science, but I think it's like you just hit a really important point. The point is that, all right, let's just assume that we have, just pick a number, say 400 housing units at MCI. Well, we know exactly, based on the permits, how many 2-bedroom and larger units we're going to have. And the reality is someone needs to have the adult conversation to say, look, you're going to overload the schools, you're going to overload water, et cetera, so that it might be fine to have, pick a number, 400 units. But you know what? A majority of them need to be 1-bedrooms or 1.5 bedrooms or 2. No one's, and I've spoken to the consultants for the MCI, it's just no one's thinking with that granularity as to, we tend to focus on numbers. Well, 400 units. Well, 400 3-bedroom units is much different than 400 1-bedroom units.
Yeah.
So I think we all benefit.
I agree. Is a certain way is we have a chart. And this is something we can push potentially as individuals towards the MCI working group there to just be more specific on things, what this is leading or what are they planning. And because that to your point is one unit could be one person to 5, 7 people, including school-age children. Right now we have to do some basic assumptions and then refine along the way. If we take typical historic mixes of units that were built, and the town went through 1,300 multifamily unit permits in the period of 2010 to 2014. So there was a big kind of addition in that period, and you could look back and see what did that happen. What did that make? The numbers are there out of that experience.
Yeah, I will say that I still find it odd that this kind of integrative mathematics in terms of unit counts and the impact on public safety and public facilities in general is not being analyzed by the town in a meaningful way. I find that surprising. Certainly the police and fire chief, every time a major development is reviewed, these numbers come past their desks, and part of their responsibility is to evaluate, say, the impact of MCI, it's a vision plan right now, but when it gets to a zoning amendment stage, they will be reviewing the impact of, those more specified unit typologies on fire and police services, and we'll begin to see some of those numbers. And presumably they did it for the 240Bs. But at what point are we, adding all of these together and trying to understand the cumulative impacts? And so, I think that it appears that some of that analysis is not necessarily being done at the town level. If it is, I simply haven't seen the reports. That might be, that might be.
Yeah, I think this is where we have to put the pressure back. So that this is the information we need to have, and this is across all our working groups here, because population growth has an impact on all service areas of the town, not only the schools, and we need to understand that. And then on the public safety side, even more, as we just discussed. So either the town has it or it needs to be generated.
Mhm. Yep, agreed. Well, and maybe when we have our data meeting
Monday.
Monday, and then our full group meeting the following Monday, we can, have a more, I think it helps the staff when we're more specific about what it needs, about what our needs are, and some of the data is confusing. Even population forecasts, I've seen different things from different sources, not at the precinct level, as Carlin mentions, which I think could be particularly useful for the public safety side. But, from 2010 to 2014, the population in Concord actually grew a fair bit, but it's been declining.
Yeah, but it is also because we
right?
permitted 1,300 units in that period.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then it's stable because and then it plateaued, and then now it's going down because we are only permitting on average 35 new one-family housing units per year.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this, and you see where the age bracket so the moment kids turn 19, they move out, and we have a hole in the population, and then people move in when they are turning 45 plus. So we have this hole of people moving out, and when they are wealthy enough to afford a house, they move back or coming new in.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where you have right now the moving.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's
Although, do kids really move out when they're 19? Because, I still have a 22 and 20-year-old at home.
yeah, but at least you see it if you look at the census data, you see the curve that there's a hole. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can correlate very well the people that moved in with the 1,300 multifamily units that were permitted in a 5-year time period.
Mm-hmm. And MCI, I believe there are some, early days, right? It's a vision plan, but MCI is also, or there's discussion in the report of age restricting some of those units in order to try to decrease the impacts on school enrollment. So all of those things are under discussion. But I feel like we're a month into this, and I feel like we're starting to get a much better handle on our data needs, and I think the data is starting to come together, but it's still going to take us, I think, another 3 to 4 weeks to have everything that we need, not including some of the special stuff for our group, like the benchmarking and so forth.
That would be impressive if you have everything in 3 weeks.
Well, I feel like we're getting pretty close. I think
You're getting close. You're getting close.
The staff have been great. They've been
huge data dump.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
We are meandering around the agenda items, but I think that's in the quasi okay. So we have Linda raising her hand. Linda, you want to chime in?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm sorry I'm not able to turn on my camera right now, but I just want to comment that in all the various discussions right now about planning and land use and so forth, I rarely hear any comment about the infrastructure pressure on the growing aging population that Concord is currently experiencing and will for a while. So I just wanted to add that at this time. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so how do we bring this back to what we try to achieve with the agenda? Judith, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly happy based on this conversation. I mean, yes, it's been a little bit, non-linear, but I think that's makes a lot of sense given the nature of the topics on the agenda. I'm happy to take a stab at writing some bullet points that will help us craft the needs assessment state of and include some of the metrics that we've talked about, so we can take a stab at that. And then I think we could also maybe Sven and Mark start to get a list of the data sources, and I will draft up some minutes that will include the things that we talked about today. But perhaps the two of you can look at that while I'm drafting a state of needs assessment summary, and you guys could just review the data list. So that Sven and I have that when we talk to the staff on Monday.
Yeah, Mark, go ahead.
Judith, is I'm probably using the wrong vernacular, but you've been very eloquent about this in the past. If the endpoint is a report, can we have like a flow chart of like, first we get the data, then we meet with the chiefs, then we get the chief's report, and then we give the chief's report and the data to the consultant, and the consultant takes so much time, then comes back to us, and then I think a flow chart with a goal, like what we're trying to achieve in the end, would be super helpful for me at least.
Oh, so maybe one specifically for our subgroup that has tasks for our subgroup. Yeah, I like that
Yeah,
idea.
and I mean, we're trying to solve a problem, and how do we think we're going to solve, or how do we think we're going to make recommendations that we believe could reasonably solve the problem?
Yeah, agreed. And that in the context of the larger group work, we had initially talked about the subgroups reporting back either in December or January. So Mark, would a 4-month kind of 4 to 5 month work plan, would that work for, is that what you envisioned, or did you envision like the full year?
No, that's fine. And I think that I would be surprised if when with the subcommittees or groups met, there wasn't a lot of commonality in all the processes. I mean, hopefully we're sort of like, all benefiting from each other's input. But at the end of the day, I think reasonably everyone should be focused on the same thing, and that is to solve a problem to which they were asked to solve. And if there is disparity, maybe we can each take from, maybe we can caucus among the groups to make sure that at the end of the day, everyone's sort of pulling in the same direction, everyone's sort of using the same process. That process is getting data, being proactive, working with planning, and everything fits. I suspect because we have you and Sven, particularly you, Judith, that we will have a really good flow chart, really good plan of attack. And I hope the others do as well. I just want to make sure that all the groups are thinking the same way. And if we're thinking about it wrong, tell us we're thinking about it wrong. No problem.
Yeah, I think that's great feedback. I know that we floated a preliminary work plan at the last meeting, and I think the plan was based on the feedback we received that we would bring a sort of a revised and updated work plan to the larger group meeting on the 18th, and maybe that would serve both functions, Mark. It would give us a little bit of direction and time management for the next few months, but would also make sure that all of the groups are doing essentially not all the same tasks, but they're hitting milestones that will allow us to have the conversations that we need to have when we bring everybody back together. Does that make sense, Sven? Yeah.
Yeah, and Mark, just to add on this, so Judith and I, we try to listen in to the other groups, just because there's a lot of horizontal work that needs to be done. Data is one, a lot of the same data requests are coming out of the different groups. So we try to run that as a horizontal kind of working group. And then the process is similar. In the end, these things need to come together in a similar process and not double work done across. So so far only one other subgroup had met. The Public Works one still needs to meet, mainly because one was on vacation and one person resigned. So we have to reshuffle that. Yeah.
And will we be able to quickly replace or fill the position that?
Yeah, so the discussion right now is either have a temporary fill or they do it as fast as possible. I have a call with that respective chair or co-chair, hopefully later today or over the weekend.
Okay, and I should notice, but from a calendar perspective, what time is our meeting on the 18th?
It's
I'd
typically
say 4, but I'm
4.
not
Yes.
sure.
I have it as 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And are we now moving to Mondays? Is that what we're doing, or?
We're trying to do it every other Monday for now when the select board is not meeting.
Okay.
So
I think one thing too we could think about in advance of our workflow is maybe for the next meeting, do we want to invite the chiefs
I think
to
so.
our next meeting? And I don't know, does it make sense? You guys know these folks better. Does it make sense to do like fire discussion one day and then police at another meeting, or should we do it all at once?
I think this will be mainly in the beginning to set expectations and discuss what we need from them. And then give them another setting that might be separate, where we focus on fire separate from police.
Okay, sounds
I
good.
don't know if we can expect already by asking them for data immediately them delivering something. It's probably best to invite them here to say this is what our task is, acknowledge the tours, acknowledge what we saw, set expectations and request what we need to get from them.
Yeah, and they also may have knowledge of reports and metrics and stuff that will save us time, right? So
Yeah.
so that'd be great. Shall we ask Shannon to follow up with maybe setting that up? And part and parcel of that, I guess, is for us to decide amongst the 3 of us when a good meeting time is. If the larger group is going to be meeting on Mondays at 4, honestly, Friday afternoons, late Friday afternoons are pretty good for me relative to my other work obligations. But I don't know.
Yeah, for me, Friday is in my job site is the day I keep free of job obligations. So Fridays are always the best for me, but I don't know how, Mark, what weekdays are best for you?
No, this time's okay.
Yeah.
So maybe Friday at 4, Friday at 3:30, or Friday at 4.
3:30 would be better for me. I just don't want to run into like late Friday.
Gotcha. All right. I could also do 3 for that matter. So I don't know if anybody has a preference to go to 3, 3:30, 4 o'clock.
I'm flexible.
Okay.
Yeah, 3 is better for me.
All right. So let's tentatively say that. I'm sorry, Mark. Did you say 3 or 3:30 for you?
3 is better,
Great.
preferred.
Okay. All right. So why don't we tentatively say Friday at 3, but I don't think every Friday, like every second Friday.
Yes.
So the next one then would be after our collective meeting on the 18th. So it would be Friday, August 22nd at 3.
Okay. And then we work with Shannon, hopefully that the fire and police chiefs can join for that meeting.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. Well, I think we've got the ball rolling. there's stuff to do, but in a way, the public safety stuff also follows kind of a set of rules that I'm not sure the other groups have the same, their stuff is a little bit more murky. So at least this
You want to,
follows some rules.
as another prep work for the next meeting, just what Mark mentioned, to have a quick and dirty narrowing down, or a quick and dirty list of properties we all think we should, as a first step, have on a radar screen, and then see if we need to expand from there or cut from there.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we'll have that for the 18th, Sven, to share with the larger group.
That's a large list for us.
Yeah, I agree. But we start with the large, everybody starts with the large list, and then it's very easy to go to a short list from there.
Yeah. But I think we should have that as a little exercise for the next meeting, that we have that on the agenda, to go through the list and see what makes sense from a size and location perspective.
Could we also potentially have the chiefs participate? I participate. I mean, we'd have to give it to them in advance, I think, so that they could think about it. But there also might be some sites that are
they think and they have ideas of, and they should tell us.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so that seems to be our agenda is kind of taking shape for the next meeting, which is to meet, invite the chiefs in for a conversation, and then also to maybe run through the long list of sites and get to a short list so we can begin to have some conversations, or at least focus in on the pros and cons of those. I agree. That winnowing from long list to short list should be relatively straightforward. Choosing amongst the ones that remain on the list would be a more difficult task, or evaluating them.
Yeah, or options of, let's say, we acquire a property right next to existing one or so.
Yeah.
This takes a little bit more.
Agreed. All right, anything else that anybody can think of? All right, and then I believe we can...
Public comment, Colin.
Thank you, Carlin Reed again, member of the Finance Committee, speaking on behalf. You may find out a couple of things when you speak to the fire chiefs. One, the retired chief, Tom Judge, is a wealth of information. So when you think about the chiefs, think about speaking with him, as well as the new interim chief, Brian Whitney. I happened to run into both of them at the same time at the clerk's office yesterday, because the old chief was showing the new chief where to dispose of paper that needed to be shredded, which is at the clerk's office. So we had a nice little conversation. And yes, they're both very well aware of the need for extended presence in West Concord units, so that they're already primed for that. Second thing you may also discover is that the fire chief will say that the number of personnel he needs is driven by population. But the police chief is not tied to that. And these are based on national standards for how many fire personnel you need in a town. In my sense, in talking to the police and the fire chiefs, there was some discrepancy on how many personnel they need, which also drives how large a facility they need. So they may be different, not the same thing. Anyway, those are my comments. Thank you very much.
Good.
Very enlightening. And Mark, thank you for acknowledging with the FinCom stuff, because your committee has a lot of great ideas, but we got to find a way to pay for it. Thanks.
You have good color printers, I heard.
Yes.
Perhaps the town should take one of the properties and do a Bitcoin mining facility.
That's funny.
All right. I would make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Talk to you soon.